The Antonov An-24, a twin turboprop transport aircraft, first took to the skies in 1959, a time when the Soviet Union was aggressively expanding its aviation capabilities to serve both civil and military sectors. Designed by the Antonov Design Bureau in Kyiv, the An-24 was created to replace the aging Lisyunov Li-2 and Aviation Il-14 fleets. It was intended for use on short to medium-haul routes, capable of operating from unpaved airstrips and in remote, rugged environments. Its robust design, featuring a high wing configuration and reinforced landing gear, made it a favorite for difficult missions and routes underserved by modern jetliners. By the time production ended in the early 1980s, over 1,000 units had been built in the Soviet Union, with additional licensed production taking place in China under the designation Y-7. Equipped with two Ivchenko AI-24 turboprop engines, the aircraft was capable of cruising at speeds of about 270 knots with a maximum range of around 1,800 kilometers. It could carry up to 44 passengers and a significant amount of cargo, making it ideal for both civilian and military operations. The An-24's simplicity, ruggedness, and versatility allowed it to serve in some of the harshest environments on the planet, from the freezing airfields of Siberia to the high-altitude airports in Central Asia. For decades, the An-24 served not only the Soviet Union but also satellite states and countries aligned with the Eastern Bloc. In its early years, the aircraft was celebrated as a symbol of Soviet engineering prowess. However, the aircraft was not without its limitations. Its systems were mostly mechanical, and while this made it easier to maintain in remote areas, it also meant that the aircraft lacked the safety and automation features of more modern airliners. Over time, as newer aircraft like the An-26, An-30, and Western-built turboprops entered service, the An-24 began to fade from frontline commercial use in many countries. But in Russia and other post-Soviet states, where aviation infrastructure was still developing, the An-24 remained in operation well into the 21st century. This prolonged usage led to concerns over maintenance, safety, and aging systems. As the aircraft aged, so did the likelihood of mechanical failure. Numerous An-24s suffered incidents related to engine fire, landing gear malfunction, and structural fatigue. One of the more infamous accidents occurred in July 2011, when an Angara Airlines An-24 experienced an in-flight engine fire en route from Tomsk to Surgut. The crew attempted an emergency landing on the Og River, but the aircraft broke apart during the landing, killing 7 of the 37 people on board. This crash sparked renewed discussions in Russia about retiring older aircraft, particularly Soviet-era designs that no longer met modern safety standards. Despite growing pressure to retire the An-24, the aircraft remained in limited service, particularly with small regional airlines in Siberia and the Russian Far East. These operators relied on the An-24's ability to land on rough terrain and operate in extreme weather conditions. Angara Airlines, based in Irkutsk, was one of the few remaining commercial operators still flying the type. Their fleet included several An-24s that had undergone minor upgrades but were still fundamentally based on the original 1960s design. Then came the tragic crash of July 24, 2025. A 49-year-old An-24, tail number RA47353, operating flight AGX-251 from Blagoveshchensk to Tinda, vanished from radar while on final approach. The flight had attempted one landing, aborted due to poor visibility, and circled around for a second attempt. During this time, the aircraft lost radio contact. Search and rescue teams were deployed almost immediately, aided by satellite imagery and Mi-8 helicopters. Wreckage was found the next morning, scattered and burned, deep within the forested hills south of Tinda. All 48 people on board were confirmed dead, including 42 passengers and 6 crew members. Among the victims were 5 children and multiple young couples returning from a conference in Blagoveshchensk. One particularly heartbreaking story emerged of Natalia Shion, a 33-year-old biochemist, and her husband Sergei, who had been traveling to celebrate their wedding anniversary. The couple had documented their journey on social media just hours before takeoff. Their loss, along with so many others, triggered a wave of national mourning. Russian President Vladimir Putin expressed deep condolences and ordered a minute of silence during a state meeting. The tragedy also drew international attention, with Chinese President Xi Jinping offering sympathy due to the presence of a Chinese national among the victims. The official investigation, launched by Russia's Interstate Aviation Committee, focused on several possible causes. Early indications pointed to a combination of poor visibility, outdated instrumentation, and pilot disorientation. There were no distress calls from the cockpit, suggesting the crew may have lost situational awareness in the final seconds before impact. The aircraft had passed a routine inspection earlier that year, but experts questioned whether standard inspections were sufficient for such an old airframe. Maintenance records revealed a history of minor mechanical issues, including hydraulic leaks and fluctuating engine temperatures, issues that had been patched rather than permanently resolved. The crash reignited the debate over the continued use of aging Soviet-era aircraft in commercial service. Aviation analysts criticized the lack of political will to invest in newer aircraft, citing budget constraints, sanctions, and a slow-moving domestic aerospace industry. Russia had been developing a replacement for the An-24, known as the TVRS-44 Ladoga, but production delays and limited funding meant that airlines like Angara were forced to keep flying aircraft that were, in some cases, nearly half a century old. Calls from the aviation community to immediately ground all An-24s gained traction in the days following the crash. Several regional governors imposed temporary bans on the aircraft, and the Federal Air Transport Agency launched an emergency inspection of all remaining An-24s in commercial use. The tragedy also shed light on broader systemic issues. Airline work